Welcome to my channel, or welcome back, loyal viewers. I'm Carrie, the nosy housefrau, and today I'll be sticking my nose in on the super duper hot topic of Trisha Paytas leaving the show Frenemies. And I've been very busy since the last time I was here. I know you've been saying, who's gonna come back first, Jane Dawson or the housefrau? I win. I wasn't even disgraced. I've been fostering these cuties. These two are still with me out of the whole litter and the mama. They're the only two that didn't quite make weight, and they knew I'd fatten them up. And no, they're probably just trying not to make weight so they can stay. And they're so cute. Make weight means that when they weigh a certain amount, they know they can fix them, and they'll go to their permanent homes. So I'm keeping these for the shelter right now. Luna and Chloe Rose. They're very playful 9-week-old kittens, and there's another one that's 9-week-old from another litter named Emberly, and she looks a lot like Luna. They play crazy because they're kittens, and Luna here is precious to me. I don't know how I'm going to part with her, but let's get right into the drama. So much has happened. So much has happened, and I'm very glad to be back. As you know, there has been a major fallout. Pull up a chair. I'm going to have a Spellegrino as we discuss what happened. And I have a lot of thoughts. There's so much to unpack. So I'm going to go over a little bit of what happened, and then Trisha's leaving. I have thoughts about all of it. But first I want to copy Ethan's recipe for success, because, you know, he says he has his staff work hard to make sure all the shows go well. So I took it upon myself to call Domino's and order the Ethan, which is his pizza that has jalapeno, black olives, and pineapple, which he says is so good. And clearly the key to a good podcast or having anything be successful, as I hope my video is to eat pizza and talk with your mouth full. So I'll see what I think of this. Oh yeah, what we're going to talk about. Want to talk about the Logan Paul fight? Yeah, no, I didn't watch it. We'll think about Ethan. Yeah. He has a staff that really makes sure that show stays interesting. This is interesting pizza. It's actually really good, but it is spicy. I think I would swap out the jalapeno for banana pepper next time. Woo, moving right along. Yeah, fascinating. Well, that's what I get for ordering the Ethan Kleinapple Surprise Cursed Pizza Pie from Domino's. Right after I filmed myself eating it, a kitten jumped from behind me across to the box, which, if you'll pardon the expression, catapulted, and pizza went flying everywhere. So did my phone, which I couldn't find until I noticed it was under the bed. It was really bad. There's some dark magic in that Domino's pizza. Maybe the box should have like a Ouija board, and then you just take a slice of pie and it guides you to what it wants to tell you. You could have like a whole new seance. It's gonna change sleepovers. Just don't tell me I didn't warn ya. Don't come for me, Domino's. So unless you've been in a drama cave, you've heard or seen that Trisha Paytas and Ethan Klein had a blowout on the set of Frenemies. Much like ones they've had in the past, but you could see the tension mounting this time. Even from the beginning, when things seemed okay, there was kind of like a tense look on everyone. And maybe that's just my impression, but it seemed that way. And the tension mounted until we were at DEFCON 1, and Trisha said, shut it down, and took her toys and went home. She insisted that they end the podcast rather than continue after she stormed off, because that made her look so much better. The rift kind of started when, earlier in the podcast, Trisha was already getting interrupted by Ethan. She was, in my opinion, carrying most of the show. When she would bring up a subject, you know, he'd stuff in his face with pizza going, yeah, I didn't do that. I didn't want like you see me imitate, like, no, I didn't see the fight. And then they started talking about Drake Bell, and she brought that up, and she had much more information than he did. And he was like, well, it took, you know, since 2017 because they need time to investigate. And this actually will bring us to the 5%, because had he or his staff done 30 seconds of Googling, it took me maybe less than that, to find out that it wasn't just that the investigation takes that long. He's like saying this is why James Charles may get a knock at the door in the future. Well, it turns out this victim didn't even complain to the police till 2018, but it was in Canada. So there was that too. And then the Canadian police had to contact Cleveland, who did then have to form an investigation. And that's really not difficult information to come by. So that brings us to this 5% that seemed to be the crux of the whole problem between Ethan and Trisha. It started it out. First of all, I can tell you, I don't know how many rich people you know, but the last thing they want to talk about is money. It was good of him to admit that in his most recent podcast, that vlog that he uploaded, is that he doesn't like to talk about money. That's the first time I've heard a rich person say that. Believe me, I know that. They do that thing. You go into their house like, wow, that's a nice big screen TV. It was on sale. Oh, why are you going to Hawaii? I've talked about this before. It's like you can be wealthy without shame. You don't have to be embarrassed in front of your less wealthy friends. But anyway, she brought up the 5%, which is going to make the hair on the back of his neck stand up. And it seems pretty obvious he's very generous with Trisha. But there's a huge misunderstanding over her bringing up this 5%, in my opinion, and I'll start with that. When Trisha brought up the 5% that comes out of her cut, just from the Frenemies income, she gets 45%. He gets 50 and he takes an extra 5 for production and the crew. Now, two things people have misunderstood about this. One, that is not exclusively where the payroll is pulled from. It's more of a bonus, probably for all intents and purposes, but it's partially something that goes to them, and it also goes to production's costs, and that is not something that they itemize for her. And of course, Trisha bringing it up again and again is not good. It's actually pretty inappropriate, especially when you're live. It seems like she's given off the never enough vibe. But the reason she brought it up is because Trisha and Ethan have what I think is the biggest problem besides mistrust. This is the two conclusions I've come to. There's a lot of mistrust, but also they have creative differences. And Trisha wants to go bigger. She has survived on the internet for a long time by reinventing herself, by coming up with things that make people watch her, and her instinct, my opinion is, her instinct is to make people wonder what she's going to do or say next. That's how she rolls, and she wants to be entertaining, and she's afraid of being boring. She'd rather sit there and act crazy than be boring. There are some people in Hollywood who will say it's better to be bad than be boring, and she seems to be that type. And she's getting the impression that Ethan is saying, you just sit there and look pretty, and we'll do the rest. And that's probably what he's saying, but it's a formula that has worked. And to most people, all she has to do is come in and pick up a paycheck. But that's not really something that makes her rest easy. She wants to have a little more creative control. The 5% also probably comes up, in my opinion, because part of her disorder is mistrust and paranoia. That's my opinion. I know that there are different clusters, but she seems to exhibit this thing, and she's concerned about what she's not getting. She's concerned that these are not people she can trust. And I'm not so sure that she's wrong to get that vibe, because they're different than her. They're quiet, reserved people, and she needs a lot of reassurance, as we've seen. It is my belief that Ethan and Hila have been very, very generous with Trisha. Now, she claims, and this I believe her on, that she didn't bring up that 5% because she wants more money. It's not about greed for money. It's about creative control. Her feeling was, if you're doing so good, if your staff is doing so well that you have so much to talk about, it started out with her saying Ethan's recycling the same stories between his two podcasts. She was unhappy that he labeled the podcast pregnancy announcement on one with Trisha, which made it sound like she might have a pregnancy announcement. She had some very sharp observations, in my opinion, that Ethan should listen to. He should take a little bit from her expertise and listen to her. Now, he says he does, but there was kind of a kibosh put on that a few times. Her comments, if you listen to their video, her comment was, if you're getting this 5%, what do we have to show for it? You're supposed to be putting this into production, but you don't know what you're talking about. You're recycling material. She's trying to keep the energy in there and keep life in the podcast, and it probably makes her feel like she's acting with the wall when he's just sitting there like bored, stuffing pizza in his mouth. That's not everybody's pace. At the same time, She has to trust that what there is between them is something that the listeners like. He's been doing a lot right, or they wouldn't have this success. They both did bring this success to the table. But here's where it becomes very difficult. Trisha's difficult. And I really feel for Ethan and the rest of that crew to have to deal with somebody who changes what they say all of the time, who says, I would love to wear this outfit, and then when you're live says, I don't even know who these characters are. And that's what she did with the Addams Family costumes. I don't know why it's always Halloween in that podcast, but that is neither here nor there. She said she would love to dress like that. She has her, costume people make these outfits and then says, this is dumb, I don't want to wear it. And when confronted with that lie, her explanation is, well, that was just a lash out. That's not okay. You can't lie about something or give somebody such a hard time and then say, well, that was just a lash out. Then stop making 8 videos on how horrible he is and what a liar he is. Again, the takeaway from this exchange for many people was that Trisha Paytas holds herself to a completely different standard than she holds other people to. In that same video where she had a meltdown because he said, okay, whatever you say, because he just got tired of trying to get through to her, or whatever, for whatever reason, he did that passive-aggressive whatever you say thing. Well, she's done that to him many times. She said that earlier in the same podcast. She went, yeah, right, and rolled her eyes. So how is that so different? And yet she blows up and says, I can't believe you just did that to me. I'm in therapy 4 times a week. I'm sorry, you are not that fragile. And I'm going to give her points for that same exact thing, for saying that she thought the Q&A was stupid. Now, she did violate the rule of yes and, which a lot of you may have heard of. It's like the first rule of improv, the first rule of any kind of entertainment or performing is you say yes and to everything. You never bash a skit while you're in the middle of it. That is very bad form. So she was wrong to do that. She absolutely was. But it is my belief that they made it sound so much worse than it was. And again, that's not holding her to the same standard, because a lot of her ideas get shot down like it's nothing. It's no problem to make her the butt of a joke and shoot her down and talk over her. But when she says that's stupid, suddenly she's a bitch. And that's just the most terrible. How could you do that to this girl on her first day of work? And it's like, come on, she's not going to kindergarten. Get a thicker skin if you're going to be a writer in Hollywood. That you'll be lucky if that's the worst thing that ever happens to you. And I don't think it was that bad, because she is part of the team. And then later, Trisha admitted that she did get on board with that Q&A. She tells them before they're on set 2 different things. So she said, yes, it was a good idea. And then later, when she was confronted with that contradiction, her response was, well, I was just lashing out. I was in a bad mood that day. And as she sits there crying about how horrible everyone is to her, this is not acceptable. As far as downtown goes, I don't know if she ever said she was on board with it and then changed her mind, but it sure seems like she does that a lot. I also wouldn't want to work in downtown LA. Most people who live in LA don't want to go downtown LA. You've got Skid Row and tourists, and maybe it's different since I left. It was 2009. I haven't been down there, but I just remember thinking, I don't want to drive my Kia through there. How is she going to drive a $500,000 car downtown LA? I don't blame her on that score. I really don't. But I do believe she probably missed or miscommunicated her. But I will never know, because we weren't there for that. We did see texts from her to Ethan, who at this point is very frazzled and throwing his hands up. I feel like he does communicate with her poorly sometimes. I rewatched the video where she had called Hila the C word, and of course that was highly inappropriate. But if you watch that video, she just says we should get her on here. She says something at first, and he shuts her down in the most abrupt, cold way. It was like, don't talk about her. We're cutting that out. Which, of course, it wound up online anyway. Don't talk about Hila. She doesn't want to be talked about. She don't want to. And he made it sound, if you watch this clip again, I'll link it below, it was like she was a criminal for bringing up Hila. Anybody would feel on the defensive much more somebody who has a personality disorder, who tends to see demons where they don't exist and feel attacked, get triggered. He does things that absolutely trigger her. And for not the first time, I saw as soon as she walked off in this video, he says, she's right. I should have Hila text her. This happens so often. And I don't know if it's deliberate or if he's just clueless socially, but he'll be cold with her, almost defensive with her, and the moment she leaves, he's all apologetic and saying all of the things he should have said to her while she was there. I don't understand why he can't do that. I know Trisha Paytas is insecure, but so does he, and I don't see why, if somebody says, I don't think you like me, why is it so hard to give them reassurance? You know, that could have been completely different. That could have been a moment for Hila to put her arm around Trisha and say, I don't hate you. Girl, I love you. Please don't think that. What a difference that would make. But not everybody can extend themselves that way. I get that. And some people might feel put out, like that they have to tippy-toe around someone's emotions, or it makes shy people withdraw when somebody says anything negative to them. Rather than realize that there's a very easy solution, they may shut down and withdraw. And this is the gasoline on the fire of Trisha's insecurity. So I can see that these people are miscommunicating. Now, a lot of people are going to say, not everybody is there to coddle Trisha, and I agree with that. I think it's pretty clear that she did want to surround herself with different people. So I'm not entirely defending that, because I think she would feel a lot better if she was surrounded by sycophants and people who'd worship her. But at the same time, I can see her sitting there with Ethan, and he's able to look off at his allies and exchange glances with them about her while she's sitting there alone with no one on her side. So on a podcast that a lot of people are going to watch and see and listen to, and that probably is the perfect storm for a downward spiral. So I believe that both parties could have handled this so much better. Is it over forever? A lot of people think so. I absolutely do not think so. First of all, I don't think they're going to give up $50,000 a month over a squabble. And this time apart always makes things blow over. They're still in each other's lives because of an in-law, and it's exhausting to keep up this kind of a problem. It's exhausting. So I think both parties will go, come on, give it another try. I think, unfortunately, Trisha is only able to see how poor her behavior is in hindsight, and she hasn't been far enough away from it to be able to concede that she handled everything poorly, and a lot of it was her fault. She did not have to react that way and insisting that he shut everything down. And when he tried talking to her, she just kept going, I have to go. And it was really awkward. And she didn't have, now I do give her credit for not saying anything that she would regret in terms of calling people names. She did remove herself from the situation, and that's good. But I really think that going home and making all of those videos about what a liar he is when everyone saw the truth about his claim. She's like, he's saying I wanted everybody fired. I didn't want everybody fired. Well, you said pretty much you wanted to clean house. You talked about getting a new crew. Even if you're talking about turkey shuffling some of those people to another part of the podcast and just not your part of the podcast, then you're still saying they should be removed. You're still going to be costing them work. She's not being honest about that. And she continues to make 3 videos at first saying Ethan's a liar. She was actually responding to his video that he felt he had to make. When he made his video, he said, I just feel I have to give my side of it. And Trisha's watching this going, it's not about sides. What is she talking about? Of course he has his side of the story. That's ridiculous. And her videos were filled with preposterous comments like that, where she was basically being a victim because nobody can do or say anything bad to her, but she can treat people like absolute garbage, and she should be forgiven because she can play the mental illness card, even though he's got all of these other problems. And here's the one that really irked me the most. She posted some DMs between them. Now, that aside, the fact that that's pretty unethical, she actually outed herself as if this was a perfectly normal conversation and perfectly acceptable. She said to him when they were talking about the price and the cut, she thought he was being Jewy. she actually said that, never apologized for it, and then posted it like there was nothing wrong with it. Something is so wrong with her. I'm not diagnosing her. I don't know what it is, but she self-sabotages, gets in her own way. She is a highly toxic person. And I think what we're coming to understand with people is that toxic doesn't mean evil. It just means somebody who is going to make your life worse with whatever their problems are, and whether they intend to or not. I mean, when he talked about Ethan in his video about the headache that she is, I felt for him and I believed him. Now, I still think he doesn't always communicate very well. I'm not sure how deliberate it is when he pushes her buttons, but he does have a pattern of not reassuring her and then making it worse. And then after she leaves going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, yeah, she was right. I should have said that. I mean, I could find you at least 3 clips after she walks out, how he's suddenly singing a completely different tune in seconds. That cannot be a coincidence. So not all of this is on Trisha. She has her problems, but this is not a great environment for her. Can she make any environment work? I'm not convinced she can, because she's not honest with herself. She holds herself to a completely different standard. She sees demons where they don't exist, and she can't control her impulses. The R comments, like Jewy, are often part of a disorder as well. That can be part of an impulse problem. So that doesn't excuse it, though. And for her to make video after video with all of those mid-rolls is pretty awful. Somebody had posted her saying he's disgusting, he's a liar, like all of this name calling, juxtaposition to him saying, I still want her in my life and we're still promoting her stuff. And, look, there's so much going on here that you could go back and forth. Points for Trisha, points for Ethan, points for Trisha, points for Ethan. They can be so oil and water, and at times it's his fault, at times it's her fault. This, I believe, was had very much to do with her problems, and she just, when she does something terrible, she sweeps it under the rug. And I've said for a long time, you will always hear Trisha Paytas say, I own it, but she doesn't. Saying I did it a year later is not the same as owning something. And she is telling that lie to herself as well, I believe. Doesn't make it okay. This is what the third man we know of, that the first guy, what you do, block him in, run a car to his house with the kids in it, and then the bruise on Moses' arm is terrible. Now, she was saying that Ethan was terrible for bringing up how she had said something to his wife, and she has a hard time living with it. She said she'll talk about it till she's blue in the face, but I don't think she likes it brought up at all. So she hasn't really talked about anything. When's the last time you heard her say, this is something that I did that I wish I didn't do. Here it is. Like, I feel like since she's in therapy, she is being more honest about these things, but she's not very good at owning it. I think one of her last videos was when she was good at owning it. It's kind of strange to me that she will sit in the middle of a podcast and say that this segment that we're doing is stupid, even though she approved it before, and then later said she said that without meaning it. What else are you going to do impulsively on these lash outs? That is not acceptable. That some people can't work with you with that. Having said that, I do believe that they are going to mend fences. Absolutely, because sometimes the bigger these blow-ups are, the faster they fizzle out. And the people behind it, and they've had fallouts before, they're kind of in the habit of repeating this pattern of making up again. So this probably, in my opinion, won't be their last blowout. I don't think that Trisha's going to get better when she's so incentivized to have these blowouts, have these meltdowns. This is very lucrative. I mean, she had 2.2 million views this morning. They probably put up 3 other videos since I started this one. But she had like 2.2 million views. And then put out her commercial today. And some people are saying that that's the timing of this drama. You can't say that about Gabbie now. In fact, Repzion left a comment like that saying, now you can't say Gabbie has drama. But I actually don't think that was the case here, because Trisha had been saying this was coming out. This timing was not on purpose. In fact, it would have been better for her to not have this happen and not get all this hate before this release. I think she did a very good job with this commercial, which I will link below if anybody's interested. It's for her skincare. It's really weird to me that she parodied the song from Sweeney Todd that is about selling snake oil. The miracle elixir in that movie is piss. So here's to ya. Good luck with that. But, you know, she put on a big number, and I have to say, thanks to modern technology, she sounded on key. We know she can't sing one line on key, but she did sound on key, so the magic of technology made her sound very good. That's the miracle in that commercial, is that Trisha Paytas could carry a tune in a bucket. So the other thing I wanted to say, which is very important in wrapping this up, you guys, and I think I covered most of how I felt about this. Let me know if I left out any details you want me to cover. But I think for the most part, we can surmise that I feel like both parties are wrong. But mostly here, I feel Trisha was to blame. And I really feel for Ethan, because I believe him that he has invested money in this merch. And he has made it so all she has to come do is get a paycheck. But these people don't understand how each other's brains work. And that's why they're miscommunicating. When she says something, he thinks she's saying that because she means what he would mean. And when she's analyzing what he says, she thinks he's meaning what she would mean if she said that. And, you know, Trisha is from Mars, men are from Venus, I guess. But the most important takeaway from this is that when he said he's quoting Shakespeare when he says, I'm not going to cry because it's over. He actually said that part wrong too, but I'm not going to cry because it's over. I'm going to be happy that it happened. And then he gave a shout out to Shakespeare. And I think we all know that was Kurt Cobain. Just kidding. It was Dr. Seuss. They're all so whimsical. It's hard to know. It's good to be back, you guys. I just remembered there was another point I wanted to make that really stood out to me. And that was Ethan saying that it's his job to protect his staff. I believe he was protecting no one when he chose to tell everyone that Trisha wanted them fired. Shouldn't he know by now she says things she doesn't mean, number one? Number two, what good does that information do anyone? All he did was make his staff probably, if anything, a little bit insecure about their job, or make them concerned. Even if they trust him completely, that's just not something you tell somebody. It was so unnecessary to do. And he had said in his video that he was just guilty of being too honest. I don't buy that. I think that that's minimizing what you did. You had a big mouth and you wielded your honesty like a blunt instrument. Please do better. You're old enough to know that there are certain things that don't need to be shared and will make things worse. This is what I mean about how he seems to have a cluelessness. And I think that, of course, Trisha is not going to want to come into work when you tell her they're all upset with her because she, you know, and you don't blame them because she railed into her really hard. Then he also said later that the girl that Trisha had criticized wasn't mad at her at all. So then he really didn't need to go there. And one final thought, Trisha's big dream was always to work for a big studio like Disney. In fact, she said one of the reasons she turned to OnlyFans was because when she reached a certain age and it didn't happen, she had to have plan B. And I have to ask you, with all of her ambition about becoming more famous, how much does she think a studio would put up with if she were to constantly bring up what she's getting, what she's not getting, and acting suspicious of their cut? Do you think even when the cast of Friends went in to negotiate $1 million an episode that they had some delusion that they were making half of what the network was making? I mean, you could be an A-lister and the studio is always going to make a lot more than you. That's understood. You accept the deal you make and ask if you're being treated fairly, and then you shut your damn mouth about what they're getting. Nobody else in a big studio or in a big Hollywood production would put up with that. So it's almost like when this safer place is created for her, she abuses it, because I don't think she'd pull that with anybody else. And that's just my take on that. Thank you so much if you've listened this far. I look forward to our exchanges in the comments. Let me know what you think. Are they going to put the fr back in frenemies, or is it just enemies now? Oh, frownemies. Thank you so much, you guys. That's definitely the cue that means it's time to go home when I'm laughing at my own stupid jokes. I appreciate you so much if you've listened this far. My dear wonderful patrons. I will be doing an after show for you tomorrow, and I look forward to it. And until next time, everybody, Hausfrau out.